All right, guys, Wes here. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we've got another big update for Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, including a new patch that was deployed by Nintendo. We're going to go over that patch. I'm also going to talk about the future of the franchise, as well as post-launch content in the form of potentially 2 DLCs releasing for Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Real quick, guys, this video is sponsored by Honkai Star Rail, a new multi-platform space fantasy RPG from HoYoverse, the makers of Genshin Impact. This cross-platform free-to-play game features an immersive story and worldviews with the turn-based combat mechanism. Battles are also a refreshing experience. The richness of strategic matchings brings diversity in gameplay, where different combat combinations create different experiences. With exquisite and gorgeous satire, detailed and vivid expressions, you'll definitely be able to find a style that suits you from dozens of characters, each possessing their own unique flair. Carefully crafted cutscenes, professional cinematography, and animation direction will grant players the same level of audiovisual experience as a top-notch animation or TV series. This is Jing Yong, one of the Shenzhou Alliance's 6 generals, who leads the Cloud Knights of the Shenzhou Lafu. So Jing has got a unique, seemingly laid-back demeanor, but he's got an underlying calculating nature, making him an interesting and complex character to explore. Jing Yuan's ultimate is called Lightbringer, and it deals lightning damage equal to 120% of Jing Yuan's attack to all enemies, and increases Lightning Lord's attack count by 3 for the next turn. Jing Yuan is a 5-star lightning element character, known for his mastery over the lightning element, and honestly, he just looks really cool. So I definitely recommend you guys checking out Jing Yuan when you get in game. Jing Yuan from Honkai Star Rail is out now. Check the pinned comment and link in my description to download the game and try him out for yourself. So be sure to use the promo code on screen for 50 stellar jades. So thanks again to Honkai Star Rail for sponsoring today's video. The first thing that I'd like to talk about is the new update they recently launched, the 1.1.1 patch notes. So in the patch notes, they added a bunch of new updates and fixes, as well as performance improvements. But the biggest note to add is they fixed an issue where sometimes the player could not clear the main quest, the closed door, even if they fulfilled the conditions to advance the quest. Now, they said if you've already encountered the issue, you will be able to clear the quest by downloading this update data. And then for the next bullet point that they stated, several issues have been addressed to improve the gameplay experience. So this is the typical patch notes for a Nintendo game. They typically don't go into detail on every aspect that they fixed for the game, frame drops in certain areas, possible stutters, and just the general optimization to make sure that the game is continuously being updated and polished so it gets to the standard that Breath of the Wild is at its current state. Whenever Breath of the Wild launched, it did have some issues. There were frame drops. So I'm sure a month or 2 down the road, and there's been a bunch of updates to Tears of the Kingdom, the game will be in a super polished state. I don't believe they fixed the duplication glitch either. So if you guys are not wanting to update because of that, you should be clear to update the game. Next up, I'd like to shift focus and talk about some new content that's going to be added to Tears of the Kingdom. So the question, are we going to get DLC for Tears of the Kingdom? I think the safe answer is a hearty yes. With how insanely successful this game has been in its first week, I don't think that there's any shot that Nintendo doesn't get some DLC in the oven right away. Heck, it's probably already in the process of being developed. After all, Tears of the Kingdom started development as a DLC for Breath of the Wild, so it's not like Nintendo has never thought about making some hefty expansions for Zelda games, especially since we got 2 DLC for Breath of the Wild, those being the Champion's Ballad and the Trial of the Sword. With how massive this game already is, there are a million different ways the team could expand upon the base content. DLC is a massive sales opportunity for this game to be a huge and successful game, especially if Nintendo plans on making another console. Releasing that new console and then giving us DLC for Zelda Tears of the Kingdom would be a great way for them to take advantage of the hype that is Tears of the Kingdom. Now, as for when we're going to hear about DLC, I'm guessing Nintendo doesn't want to take the hype away from the base game's launch, so I'm not expecting to see any type of DLC or an expansion talk until closer to the Game Awards in 2023. Now, it's also possible that we get something at the Direct presentation that is rumored to be happening within the next month or 2, around the same time as the Xbox presentation. And while that may seem like a decent time to show off Tears of the Kingdom DLC, I think that's still going to be a little bit too close to the launch of the base game. Like I said, if you ask me, I think the first opportunity for a DLC announcement will likely be the Nintendo Direct after the next one, or the Game Awards that will happen at the end of the year. So I wouldn't expect to hear anything about the Tears of the Kingdom DLC at the upcoming Nintendo Direct. If we get a Direct for October or November, that's likely where the announcement will be, but if not, then it will be during the Game Awards. Now, in previous videos, I talked about how the future of the Zelda franchise was a little uncertain because on one hand, Zelda could continue as this massive open world franchise, but on the other hand, a future Zelda game may serve as a back to the basics adventure with a smaller scale and design closer to Twilight Princess or Majora's Mask. However, in a recent interview with Game Informer, series producer Eiji Aonuma stated that Breath of the Wild may actually serve as the blueprint for the franchise going forward, similar to how Ocarina of Time served as the franchise blueprint for a long time. So from the looks of it, Zelda is going to remain as an open world franchise for at least one more game, but what remains to be seen is just how Nintendo progresses from Tears of the Kingdom. It's very possible that the next game is just another massive expansion of the existing map, but it's also possible that it's an entirely new time period with a new version of Hyrule, or perhaps an entirely new location. I think what Nintendo will do for the next game is try to bridge the gap between the original style with Ocarina of Time and then Tears of the Kingdom and try to get something closer to the middle. Tears of the Kingdom did a really good job of that, but there are some Zelda purists that still want the original experience from the old school games. And for those people, it may be a little bit disheartening to hear that Zelda has more or less fully transitioned to be an open world franchise, but when you look at the sales numbers, it's really hard to argue with that logic. I mean, not only was Breath of the Wild one of the best-selling video games of all time, and after everything is said and done with this game, Tears of the Kingdom may end up selling even more copies in its lifetime. According to early reports, Tears of the Kingdom is the biggest physical game launch of 2023, and in total has sold over 10 million copies in its first 3 days on the market, which is a massive achievement. With those kind of sales numbers, there's no way Nintendo won't want to keep things going for at least one more game. It's unknown if the next Zelda game will actually be a direct sequel to Tears of the Kingdom, making Breath of the Wild the first of a trilogy, which would be a huge deal for the Zelda franchise, but honestly, it wouldn't surprise me at this point. As you probably heard, the launch of Tears of the Kingdom was a little hindered by the early leak that resulted in the entire game being released on PC roughly 2 weeks early after someone ripped a physical copy and uploaded the ROM online for people to use on emulators. Nintendo obviously took this very seriously and did their job to shut down the leaks, and it was recently reported that they took some very drastic measures to make an example of those downloading the game. According to a recent report, multiple users on Reddit were sent messages from Comcast after downloading the game files, suggesting that Nintendo is working with internet service providers to track down and identify people downloading Tears of the Kingdom, which is pretty insane when you think about it. I've heard of publishers taking legal action against leakers and hackers, but I've never heard of them working with ISPs to hunt people down who downloaded the game files. Nintendo is not messing around with this kind of stuff, so if you plan on downloading the game for an emulator, be careful when you do. Despite the risks involved with playing this game on an emulator, there are some pretty obvious benefits of doing so, one of which being the graphics, as well as the frame rate. While I think it's amazing that Nintendo got this game up and running on the Switch in the first place, there's a lot of people that are upset that the game charges $70 for an only 30 FPS game. While I do agree that 30 FPS games should be left in the dark, this is the Nintendo Switch we're talking about, a 10-year-old SoC. Whenever the Switch was released, it was already an outdated chipset, so the fact that they were able to get this game running at 30 FPS is a technical marvel. But I think the release of Tears of the Kingdom is a massive indication that Nintendo seriously needs some new hardware, and it seems like that's actually going to happen in the near future, as there have been numerous leaks regarding some kind of upgraded Switch, or perhaps a new console altogether. Likely it's going to be the Switch 2, a hybrid console. Maybe they'll call it the Switch Pro, who knows. But when that Switch 2 is inevitably announced, I'm sure Tears of the Kingdom is going to be a massive selling point, because I know tons of people would love to play this game at 1080p at 60 FPS, and if Nintendo comes out and announces a new console that will do that, which seems to be the plan according to the leaks, it would sell incredibly well right out of the gate. Next up, I'd like to talk about a tweet from Gene Park from Washington Post. In the article, they stated that Eiji Aonuma said when he announced in March of 2022 that a delay for Tears of the Kingdom would happen, the game was pretty much complete. The last year of the development was spent on polish, making sure the physics of the game just worked. Like, imagine being any other company besides Nintendo and having a complete product and say that you want to delay the game by an entire year just to polish the game. Publishers like EA and Activision and Ubisoft would basically laugh in the developer's face and say, we're getting this game out as soon as possible. But I guess whenever somebody like Eiji Aonuma tells a company that they need more time, you give them as much time as they need. And it delivered, because 10 million copies in 3 days is no joke. Despite this game's near universal praise, there have been a great deal of individuals who have attempted to take it down a peg, specifically the people who participated in a recent review bombing on Metacritic that managed to get the user score all the way down to 5.6 out of 10. While obviously not every negative review for this game was a part of the review bomb, there was a giant group of gamers spamming the Metacritic page with ones and zeros due to the 30 FPS cap and the $70 price tag. Personally, I'm in the middle of this one. While I do understand that it's kind of absurd that Nintendo charged $70 for a game that runs at 30 FPS, only because of the hardware limitation. Like, if the game was running on any other thing besides the Nintendo Switch, people would not have any issues. But I don't think that it's fair ground to like entirely wreck the game's reputation, because this is obviously a very well-made game that was unfortunately forced to get up and running on a hilariously underpowered hardware. The fact that this game runs at all is a miracle, but again, I don't want to dismiss the legitimate critiques of the game due to the hardware limitations. As for the future of Nintendo's hardware game, I think it's rather rather likely that we will hear about a new console within the next 6 to 8 months. If they do it at the next presentation, that would be wild. My guess is it'll be around September, maybe October, that we hear about Nintendo's next machine. Now that Tears of the Kingdom is on the market, Nintendo doesn't really have any other major projects in development besides Pikmin 4. It seems like this is a good time for them to start turning the page and preparing everyone for the next generation of Nintendo hardware. Sure, there will be some frustrated fans who bought the Switch console specifically for Tears of the Kingdom, but I think some kind of new Nintendo hardware is long overdue. I mean, this console came out in 2017 and it was already underpowered then, so if Nintendo plans to start charging $70 for their future games, it would be the best interest for them to update their hardware and start giving players the performance they expect from a modern AAA game. With the sheer number of Switch 2 leaks coming out recently, I'm expecting that there'd be some kind of announcement in the next month or two, maybe 3 or 4 months, but don't expect the new hardware to launch until 2024, because typically we hear about new consoles roughly a year to 18 months before they launch. Tears of the Kingdom has taken the gaming industry by storm over the last week, and it's not showing any signs of slowing down. Nintendo is surely going to keep pushing the game as much as they can, and when the time comes to announce new hardware, they're 100% going to use the improved version of Tears of the Kingdom as one of the selling points. Like, I'm expecting a new patch that's 60 FPS that launches alongside the new Nintendo Switch console. But what do you guys think about the future of Nintendo and the Zelda franchise? Do you think we're going to get paid expansions? And if Nintendo were to announce the Switch 2 anytime soon, would you personally be excited for it? Be sure to let me know down in the comment section below, like the video, subscribe to the channel with your notifications turned on. Thank you so much to Honkai Star Rail for sponsoring today's video. And until next time, guys, this has been Wes, and I will talk to you again soon.